Somewhere amongst all these pieces and parts, dirt and grime is hiding an HPI Savage. And in this video, I'm going to piece this back together just enough to find out whether or not this engine still runs. Hey everyone, welcome to Adventure RC1. My name is Greg, and this is going to be the first of hopefully many videos on a series just on rebuilding this HPI Nitro Savage. The whole idea behind rebuilding this Savage is going to do it as cheaply and quickly as possible to get it back to a safe, runnable condition so I can take it out and have some fun with it. Check this thing out. It's absolutely disgusting, and it's in a ton of pieces and parts. The back end isn't even bolted onto the chassis. And check out the gas tank. That thing is absolutely disgusting. We take a look at the engine, and that doesn't look much better. That's why I've got to be smart about how I approach this. I don't want to waste any time or money that I really don't need to. That's why in this video, I'm going to start out with the engine. I've already turned it over by hand, and it feels like it's got some good compression, and of course it does turn freely. I'm going to take the back motor plate off, take a look inside and make sure that nothing evil's going on. Once I've confirmed that, I'm going to turn my attention over to the gas tank, because this thing, it had fuel in it when it was last dropped off and not ran about, probably 5 or 6 years ago. And all that's left in there now is dirt and oil residue. And I want to reuse this in today's test. And then finally, once that's getting cleaned up, I'm going to bolt the chassis and the back end back together again, just enough so that basically it'll hold the engine so I can check out whether or not this engine still has any life in it. Once I've got the engine bolted in, I'm going to make sure that the pinion gear is not engaging the main spur gear, because I don't have any radio gear hooked up to this. I'm going to be running the throttle linkage manually just to see if this will start and, most of all, stay running. When it comes to cleaning the Savage up, I'm going to be using some LA's Totally Awesome. It's good for cleaning all kinds of things, mainly for this project, grease and oil, which this thing is absolutely caked with. I'm going to hose it down with this, and then to rinse off all that grime and the cleaner, some hot tap water. When it comes to lubrication for the engine, I'm going to be using CRC 336. My personal experience is when I've used this in the past, this has never attacked gaskets or O-rings, which is all over the place on the engine and on the chassis, mainly around the transmission. All right, less talking and more rebuilding. Let's dive into this mess, starting with the engine. I'm going to get the back plate off, and we're going to see if there's evil inside or something good. The first issue I ran into already is this bolt does not want to remove. I think on these engines, they Loctited everything in place. No worries though, a little heat from a micro torch, and this will crack free very easily. After a good heat soak, we'll see if this can crack free. There we go. On projects like this, these Allen sockets, they're a lifesaver. After a little bit of careful wiggling and prying, I've got the back cover cracked free, and let's see what's lurking behind. Wow, that actually looks pretty good. I am impressed. Yep, you're seeing the same thing I am. There's no corrosion that I can see on the inside, so I'm going to make the wild assumption at this point at least that the rest of the engine, including the bearings, are going to be looking good. I'm not going to tear the engine down any further. One thing I am seeing is this nut on the back. It does look like it's got a one-way bearing in it, and it's completely seized up, so it's 100% coupled to the starter mechanism on the other side. Once again, I'm going to just leave this alone for now, because our main goal is to see if this is going to start up. Before I reassemble this, I'm going to wipe this surface down. That way I don't accidentally get any dirt or grime inside of the clean engine. Normally, I'd be putting thread locker on these screws, but I'm going to skip that for now because we're not going to be running the engine that long, and if this all works out, I'm going to be completely tearing down and rebuilding this engine anyways. Check out all the crud that's already coming off the engine. That's why the next step is gonna get most of it off with some LA's Totally Awesome. I'll get a drip tray underneath to catch the leftover residue and all the grime that's gonna wash off of this engine. I'll let that sit for a little bit. I'm going to continue to let the engine soak and periodically reapplying some more of the cleaner. Once that's ready to be cleaned up, I'm going to be taking a trusty toothbrush. I didn't have any old ones around, so I ran over to the Dollar Tree and I picked up a 6-pack for $1.25, and also that is where I got the LA's Totally Awesome, so well worth a trip to the Dollar Tree for cleaning supplies on projects exactly like this. The engine is looking good so far, and now I'm going to turn my attention over to this dirty, disgusting fuel tank. The fuel tank has a couple of fuel lines coming off of it. This one is the fuel draw that goes up to the carburetor. This orange one is part of this like fuel catch tray that's on the top, and it all pitches back towards this corner, kind of like a shower drain, and there's a hole at the very bottom that connects up to this. This line doesn't actually lead to anything inside of the fuel tank. On the fuel cap, there is a little nipple on there, and that's the pressure nipple that would come from the tuned pipe exhaust. So I'm going to take the feed line and connect that up. That way I can very safely wash the outside of the tank without getting any more contaminants inside. To clean the outside, I'll go back to my trusty LA's Totally Awesome. For the inside of the fuel tank and all of that leftover oil from the fuel left in the tank, I'm going to turn to some denatured alcohol. Just a little bit to start with and shake that around to start loosening up that old oil. The outside gets a nice dose of that LA's Totally Awesome. I'll give that a minute to soak while I turn my attention back to the engine where I give it its first little scrub. Yeah, a lot of this stuff is already loosened up, but I think some of this dirt and grime has been on here for at least 10, maybe 12 years. Now back over to the fuel tank. This is looking better already. One more application here and I'll give the outside of the fuel tank a quick scrub. I think that looks good, and now it's time for some rinse with that hot tap water. Little paper towel action here to get the rest of this dried off, and this thing is looking like almost brand new just with a quick little cleaning that I've given it. Get some of this fuel line cleaned up. You know, the last time I was over at my local hobby store, Hobbytown USA, I had some fuel line in my hand, and for some reason, I didn't buy it, even though that little voice in my head told me I'm going to need some new fuel line, but I guess that's just another excuse to go over to my local hobby store. One last little shake again before I dump all the crud out. Let's see how well this first cleaning on the fuel tank went. Oh my God, look at, can you see that? That stuff is absolutely disgusting. Looks like Soylent Green. I definitely wouldn't eat that. Now look at the fuel tank. You can see the line where it had that staining from the leftover oil in there, and just a couple little blotches down on the bottom. I definitely have to make sure that these are all broken up before I put any fresh fuel in here. So I'll have to put some more alcohol back inside the tank and give it another cleaning. So while the alcohol sits in that fuel tank, I'm going to go back to the engine and give it one last little scrub before rinsing it off with that warm hot tap water. And just look at all that crud dropping off. Look at that, the engine mount is silver in color. I thought it was black like the engine was. That's just amazing. I know it's still dirty, but most of the gunk has been knocked off, and I feel a lot better about getting the engine started. I know that I've got the inside of the clutch bell is all wet and the clutch isn't actually going to engage, but we're not engaging the pinion gear up to the spur gear in this video anyway, so a wet clutch is going to be okay for now. Mainly, I want to make sure that I can get a screwdriver on these adjustments for when I go to start this up for any adjustments that I may need to do. So while the tank continues to soak, I think this is going to be being cleaned up until it's ready to go onto the truck and finally start it. If it will stay upright, there we go. I'll get this moved off to the side and some more table protector put down. And now here's the front half of the truck and the back half of the truck. And there is a drive shaft and then some of the skid plates. I don't think I need the plastic ones right now, but I do need the metal ones because this ladder chassis is all interlocked together with the rest of the frame pieces. So it's a pretty neat design. It's lightweight and incredibly strong. And by the way, the front skid plate and the back are interchangeable. So that's pretty convenient. I've got some fasteners I think I could reuse. These came with the vehicles when I bought them off of Marketplace. And I've also got a handful of screw boxes from previous RC experiences and different projects. So hopefully somewhere between all of this mix, I'll have enough screws to put this kit back together just enough. I think that's just enough to hold the back end on. I think a screw on both sides to hold the top in and I'll be all set. This is looking pretty good. I've got enough screws in the chassis that it holds together in one piece, and now I'm ready to bolt the engine into the chassis. Got some throttle action going on, and I did remove the air filter off because this one, check that out, it's all dried out and crusty and it's not doing anything. All that I'll have left to do is the final cleaning on the fuel tank. I'll get this installed and I'll meet you outside to see if we can get this fired up. We made it outside and I'm ready to start the engine up. Some of you with a keen eye would have picked up when I was bolting the engine on, I completely forgot to put the starter box, the starter gearbox on the back of the engine. Off camera, I reattached it, and now this has somewhere to go to start the engine. So let's get to it. I've got some nice fresh fuel. I'm just gonna put a little bit in there. My first attempt of starting up the engine, I'm going to leave the carburetor settings just as they are when I got this kit. Maybe this has some good settings already in it. Normally I'd go back to the factory recommended settings. However, on some of these kits that are pretty old, near the end of the engine life, they end up starting to deviate from the factory settings. So I think I'm all set. I'm going to prime the engine and let's see if we can make some noise. We'll try a drop or two directly into the carburetor. Or way too much. We'll see if that works too. Oh, we had some life. Let's keep going. It started. Oh, all right. All I've got to do is work on getting a tune on this, but yeah, it started. Next part, we're going to try and keep it running. If this starts up right away, it's going to tell me that it was running rich and it just loaded up on fuel. Okay, that sounded like it was running a little bit lean, so I'm going to actually turn the low idle in all the way, and while I'm counting the turns, it's just so I know where I'm starting at. That was open like a quarter turn. That can't be right. I gave it another half turn. When I've been starting it, I've been actually opening the carburetor so it's actually running on the high idle needle valve and not the low idle for starting. I think that's the ticket. That started off the low idle needle valve and a little bit more. That is sounding like a pretty good idle. One thing that is slightly concerning is I'm not blowing really any smoke or any oil out the exhaust. So I think the engine is still running a little bit lean. It is also pretty cool today and the air is very dry. I think the temp is barely even hitting 40 degrees. Here in the shade, I'm a little bit chilled. So cold, dry temperatures, these nitro engines naturally lean out. So we've got to add more fuel to get them running correctly. I think what I'm going to do is run back into the studio, grab a sheet of paper, and make some little notes of how many turns I've got on the idle set screw and needle valve, and then count how many turns I have on the high idle. And that way I don't start chasing my tail as I get a nice tune in on this engine. Okay, the low idle, it started out at a half a turn out, which is way too lean. It seemed to start when I had it at 1 turn. I've added another half turn just for safe measure. The high idle, it was set at 3 1/4. I've set it to 4 just to see if I can start seeing some of the smoke to come out. The fuel that I'm using, I think it's Sidewinder with 20% nitro, and that when the engine's properly tuned, when you are running on high idle, you should see an initial plume of smoke coming out of the exhaust. So let's see if we've got that now. Watching that engine come alive for the first time in years, it's an amazing feeling. That's something I just don't get when I'm running electric vehicles. Now, there's nothing wrong with electric vehicles, but watching that nitro engine spark to life really gets my heart pumping. The rebuild of this HPI Savage is off to a great start. Off camera, I did take a look at the rest of the parts that came with this kit when I bought it off of Marketplace. Mainly the skid plates across the bottom, those were included along with some of the radio gear trays and the cover. I do believe that I have to update the servos in here because these servos are old and crusty, but luckily in a previous video series where I rebuilt a Traxxas T-Max, I grabbed some of the radio gear out of that one, saved that, and I think we're going to temporarily install it in the HPI. I don't know how it feels about that, having Traxxas gear in the HPI, but we're going to have that in here so that we can get this up and going and take it outside for a proper rip. Join me in the next video as I continue to rebuild the HPI Savage, and thanks for joining me in this video. I had a blast creating this content for all of you. Don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, or ring that notification bell. Not only is it a great way to help this channel grow, it's an excellent way to connect video content like this with other great RC enthusiasts just like yourself. Well, until we meet again in the next video, keep on rolling.